Hello, folks. Welcome back to another Telltale or Not. And today's episode is a very special episode because we have finally reached 500 subscribers. Without further ado, let's get to it. So today's episode is going to be on the Telltale. Now, what is a Telltale? Well, it typically is a pole that sticks out of the ground that has rope tied to an arm that hangs over the railroad tracks. Now, what this does is it's got ropes that come off the arm and they have little knots tied to the end of them. And what that's for is back in the day, before the automatic air brakes were invented for trains, they would have to brake the train with the hand brakes on the cars. And to do that, you would have to walk across the roof of the car to, of course, tie the handbrakes down. And this is a very dangerous practice and still is technically today. However, we don't have to run across moving trains tying handbrakes when going through tunnels, and that's exactly what this is for. This is for when you're going to be going through a tunnel or a low bridge, and you would potentially get swept off your train if you're on the roof because there's no clearance for you. They would put a telltale there, and a telltale was basically if you didn't see the tunnel and you had your back face towards it, you would feel the ropes hit you in the back or your head, and it would alert you essentially to hit the deck and not get swept off your train because you're going through a tunnel. And that was essentially the whole purpose for the telltale. Now, telltales are about as old as railroading itself. However, you'd be surprised to hear how long they were in use for. Obviously, they were around since before the invention of air brakes, and they were very essential. But they also stayed around surprisingly through the 1970s. As you can see, these are post-war and pre-war pictures of railroading. They were well into the invention of air brakes and they were still using them. But why? Why did telltales stick around so much when obviously we no longer had to ride on top of the trains and tie down handbrakes? We already had air brakes. So what was the point of the telltale? It's actually a couple of different reasons why they continued to walk the trains. One of the first is, even after the invention of air brakes, railroaders didn't trust them, so they still chose to walk the trains and set the handbrakes themselves manually. The second reason is that even after air brakes had been invented, retainers for the air brake cylinders hadn't been built yet. And now you're probably wondering what a retainer is. Well, essentially, a retainer slows down the speed that the air can escape from the cylinder. It essentially slows the bleed valve down, which means the air stays inside the cylinder longer than the brake pipe is telling it to. So therefore, a set on the brake system is held longer and typically helps hold the back of the train on the grade and keeps the train in tension more efficiently than if you were to just dump the air coming down the grade. So they tied handbrakes to kind of compensate for the fact that retainers hadn't been on all the cars yet, and at some point not at all. So even after they were on all the freight cars, how did they set the retainers? Well, retainers were actually set from the roof of a boxcar or tank car and so forth. They were actually mounted right by the brake wheel. So even after the brake stands weren't being used, they were still walking the train to set retainers. And though some of them were probably set before they got on the road, they still probably were, fiddling with stuff even then. And the third reason why brakemen still walked the roof of trains was because radio hadn't yet been invented. So how do they communicate without radio? Well, hand signals. Well, say you're going through the mountains and you're going around curves and you can't see the front of the train the whole time. How do you communicate with hand signals? Well, brakemen walk the train and they can see each other, and then the conductor can pass a hand signal to a brakeman, which goes through the line of brakemen until it gets to the head-end brakeman, and that would then go to the engineer. And that's why, on railroads like the Norfolk and Western, the doghouse on the back of the tender stayed around so long, also known as the head-end brakeman's cupola. And that's because it was an easier place for him to stay, because he's always staying up towards the front of the train, so he wouldn't have to walk the entire length of the train from the caboose. He could walk part of it. And therefore, there was always a use for the telltale. However, in the 70s, obviously, yes, they had radios, walkie-talkies, and so forth. But why didn't they use them? Well, I'm sure the batteries on those old walkie-talkies didn't work very well, or didn't last very long, more specifically. So I suppose that they only used them for maybe nighttime operation, where they couldn't see each other as well, so the walkie-talkie worked better, and they figured to save the battery for that and use hand signals during the day when they could see. Or say you have fog or you can't see very far, then the walkie-talkie made more sense. But again, sticking to your old ways. Anyway, folks, I think that's going to wrap it up for today's episode, but I'd like to give a huge thank you to all my subscribers, whether you subscribed when I had 5 subscribers or when you subscribed when I had 500. Currently, I think we have 580. Yes, this video was a little bit late, and the reason for that is because I made a video, and then somehow it got deleted, and I wasn't too happy with it, so I decided to restart and make this video, and yeah. Anyway, huge thank you to all my subscribers once again, and if you haven't already hit that subscribe button, please hit that subscribe button, like, share the video, and comment in the comment section down below. And as always, folks, see you on the rails.